have any questions at all during this webinar, we would love it to be interactive. If you just want to put a question in the chat or raise your hand, we'll make sure to monitor the chat and we can stop and answer any questions that you might have. And my name is Jen Simon. I am the sales manager here at Marquee 360. I actually just recently joined Marquee 360. I used to be a project specialist at Microsoft, and Marquee 360 was always one of my favorite project partners to work with. So we came together this fall, and I'm pretty excited to be here to help everybody with these transitions. And Mia, if you want to do a quick intro?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Mia Reed. I am a solutions architect at Marquee 360. So I typically help our customers throughout the project lifecycle. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, so next slide, please. And so we'll go over these quick introductions here. I'll talk a little bit about Marquee 360, and then we'll transition to the Project Online Retirement, what your options are, and Mia will take you through a demo of what that looks like. So a little about Marquee 360. We actually have been a Partner of the Year finalist for Microsoft for the last 4 years. As a matter of fact, I actually helped Marquee 360 submit their very first one in 2022. That was a project we did together, and it honestly was one of my most fun projects that I did at Microsoft. And more about Marquee 360, we all are pretty much industry veterans here at Marquee. We've all been in this industry for a very long time. Our founders came directly from Microsoft, much like myself, and we are here to help you innovate, automate, and build efficiencies. And, it's a new day because there's new technology, but there's lots of things that you can do with that. And our focus areas are innovation, so extending your work platform, making it all make sense for you, making sure your workflows are there so you can be the most efficient you could possibly be. And then we definitely pride ourselves on our customer success. We are an extremely customer-centric company, and we always want to make sure we are your trusted advisor and that we can help you through these processes. And then on top of that, because everything needs support in the end, we have education, training, dedicated support teams. There's all kinds of ways that we can help you move forward. And with the end of life announcement, what does this mean for you? And what are your transition options? This is what we need to go over today because it's a pretty big deal. And in many cases, people were using Project Online really in its light form, where they never even really built it out to the true capacity that it had. In other cases, customers were doing pretty complicated projects with Project Online. So we want to make sure that feature comparison really moves you forward with these paths. And there are 2 paths forward. You can use Planner with PPM 360. Or you could even go back to Project Server if you have really giant projects and you want to stay on that desktop. But the other thing to consider is there are ways to migrate with Migrate 360 from Project Online to Planner. And then also reverse, you can actually point the desktop to Planner through Marquee 360. So there are multiple options here. And actually, Mia, do you want to take it over now? I think that would be a good, this would be a good transition.
All right, great. So what we're going to look at today, we're going to talk about a couple of things, but one of the options to move forward is Planner with PPM 360. A lot of you are probably familiar with Planner because it's been around for quite some time. It's really great with task management, and it's always been good with assigning other people to collaborate with you on tasks. But what's happened more recently is that Microsoft has made a lot of improvements, and now we have what they call the new Microsoft Planner. It is very simple to use, it's intuitive, but at the same time, it still does have a lot of great options and a lot of flexibility. So you can really have your project managers run the projects the way that they feel comfortable. It's also scalable. and that's a big part of what we'll talk about later on today, we can make it so that you can build bigger plans that go beyond managing tasks and managing a full project life cycle. It's also intelligent. There are AI components that we add, and then there are also, AI growing in multiple areas. This is meant to work along with all of those AI improvements. So one of the things that we offer is an assessment for you. If you want to get together and talk about where you are now and start to talk through what your options are when it comes to these different paths, whether Microsoft Project Server Subscription Edition is going to be the best fit for you, or if it should be Planner and Planner with PPM 360. Those are all items that we can talk about. So please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. I'm going to pause here for a moment just in case you need to note these, but we'll also add them to the chat as well. So you can reach out to Marquee 360 in general or reach directly out to Jen and Charlene. So now let's talk a little bit about PPM 360. We know that Planner is great for task management, but I'm sure a lot of you need to manage more than just tasks. You've got a project with different project data. Reporting is a key part also. So what PPM 360 does is it enables you to track everything throughout your project lifecycle. So as we look at the graphic here, we typically start our project lifecycle, or at least give the option to start with an intake process. And that's where anybody can submit an idea for a new project, and then it can be reviewed, it can go through an approval process, and then create a project. When that project is created, we can include a project governance workflow so that we can track different stages of the project all the way through completion. Of course, schedule management is a part of that. So we can have your tasks included and assigned, and we can track how those are being completed. We also are very big in collaborating with Microsoft Teams. So one of the things we'll see today when we look at PPM 360 is an option to extend that to Microsoft Teams. And that just enables even more collaboration with everyone on a project team. And then, of course, reports are going to be an important part for seeing how all of the project information that you enter comes together. So we'll look at all of these items today as we walk through in the demo portion. And part of what we do when we're extending Microsoft Planner, what we're doing is we're including multiple parts of the Power Platform. So we start off with Planner as the base, and then we are using an integration with Microsoft Teams to enhance collaboration. We're extending and giving you everything you need for managing projects using Power Apps. Our intake process also uses Power Apps. Everything is stored in the cloud with Planner and PPM 360. We use Power Automate also. It's a really powerful tool that helps us to track approval requests and approval states for intake requests, governance workflows, and other parts of the system. So we'll talk a little bit more about that also. And then of course, Power BI for visualization. So we're extending Planner using the Power Platform to create PPM 360. So with PPM 360, our full solution gives you all of these things. We're going to make sure to touch on these so you get an idea of what these could look like. But I also want to point out that PPM 360 is a customizable solution. So when we do an implementation, we will start with requirements gathering. We'll have conversations with you so that we can make sure we're setting things up the way that fits your organization. All right, and the main thing with PPM 360 is that it provides one connected experience. A couple slides ago, I showed you the different parts of the Power Platform and Planner and Teams that we're bringing together to create PPM 360. One important thing to note is that you do have one connected experience. It's not that you have to open up Power Apps and then maybe open up a different Power App and then open up Power Automate. All of those things come together in one place. So that makes it really easy to look. And there's a lot of flexibility here. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and we'll jump into the demo portion. I'm going to go ahead and I have a couple things I want to share with you. When we were talking about in the slides earlier, when we were talking about the two different paths, the first path that we talked about was Microsoft Project Server Subscription Edition. Jen mentioned that if you have particularly large projects or some very specific needs, then you may want to stick with Project Server. The first thing I wanted to show is that Project Server path. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because frankly, everything that you see on the front end of Project Server, it looks just like Project Online. Our team has been working with Project Server and Project Online for many, many years. So if you decide to go with Project Server, that is an area where we're very familiar. And we can do an implementation with you where we would customize, this homepage and also customize your projects and have everything set up the way you'd like. We also do training. So we would make sure that your team is trained and comfortable with how to use everything. But just clicking through here, a lot of this is exactly what we're used to already with Project Online for those of you that are using it. So we've got our projects here, our project detail pages where we're capturing all that information. I forgot that particular PDP is one that we're doing a little bit of work on at the moment. So I'll go to our first one here. So this all will look very familiar if you're familiar with Project Online. We've got a report pack that goes along with this, and it's, from the front end, not much different at all. The main difference between Project Online and Project Server is really just how it's set up. So Project Online is cloud-based. Microsoft Project Server Subscription Edition is more of a traditional on-premise solution. So it'll be installed on your servers and hosted there. Other than that, the similarities are pretty great. So that's path one. And one thing that is in common with both paths is that we do offer help with migration. So if you're using one item or one platform for project management now, we do have migration tools that we've created that can help us to quickly migrate your projects from one location to another. So if you're in Project Online now, we can use our migration tool to move you over to Project Server, or we can use it to move you over to Planner with PPM 360. So when it comes to Microsoft Project Server, it is also SharePoint based, where what we are looking at today, or what we're about to look at, is based on the Power Platform and uses the Dataverse. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start talking more about path 2, which is Microsoft Planner with PPM 360. So I'm going to switch browsers. And one of the things that I just want to make sure that we're all comfortable with is that a lot of what you're doing in Project Online now, if that's what you're using, is it has a counterpart in PPM 360. So I'll try to point those out as we go along. One of the great things that we'll see also is that a lot of the things that kind of take up a little bit more time or reduce our flexibility with Project Online and Project Server, they are available to us in PPM 360. So things like navigating over to a project site and then making it back over to our project, we don't have to pay as much attention to that with a tool like what's on my screen now. So I think what we'll do next, we'll walk through the project's life cycle. I want to remind everybody before we start with this part of the demo that if you have any questions, please feel free to either raise your hand or add a question in the chat. We would love to see your questions as they're coming up. So what I'm showing on my page now is the PPM 360 homepage. If we're comparing this to Project Online or Project Server, this is like that PWA homepage. Another similarity is the menu over here on the left. Project Server and Project Online both use the quick launch menu on the left, and we have something similar here with Power Apps. On the home page, we typically will show charts that reflect information about the projects that you have in your system. We actually, when we customize Project Online and Project Server, typically add in charts that are similar to these as well. just so that when you reach that home page, instead of having the green tiles there, you've got some information that is useful to you. So keep in mind also that a lot of this is customizable. What I'm showing today is our out-of-the-box solution. And if you are interested in any of the changes that may be possible, that's something that you can definitely, add into the chat or ask us while we're here. So in the slide portion of this, I mentioned that the beginning of the project lifecycle that we build into here is the intake process. Looking over at the left menu here, we do have a section for project requests, and that's where we handle our intake requests in this intake portal that will show on my screen in a moment. So this will be one location where everybody can come and enter in ideas for new projects. If you have more of a smaller group that's going to be entering in the requests for new projects, then we can adjust security so that it only shows to certain people. We can also make adjustments in this area. What we're seeing now is the intake gallery, and the gallery is going to show us the existing requests. Right now, we can see a list of the requests. You can see that I've started one for us today as a draft. And one of the things in this gallery is if we need to see a little bit more information, there is a little preview here that's really informative. This list may get pretty long at some point. We can start to archive things, but one of the things that's helpful here is that there's a search that's built in. So one of the things that is nice about this is that as long as we know part of a request name, we can type that in here and get the results. Sometimes when it comes to entering in requests, I might have one idea for a name and somebody else might think about it differently, even though we're talking about the same topic. So being able to type in any part of this really helps a lot. I'm going to go ahead and reset this search and hide it. And what I've done for us today in the interest of time is create a draft for us. There is an option also to create a new request, but I would like you to see what it looks like when we have some data that's entered in already without having you watch me enter in all the data. So I'm going to open up a request. We're going to put it in edit mode. Being able to save this as a draft is something we can do at any point in this process of creating a request. I think we've all started a task and then realized that we need to run to a meeting or answer an IM or phone call. So the draft option is really helpful here. And basically what we're going to do when we fill out a request is enter in all the data we have about the request. All the fields that we're going to capture data for are listed on these different pages here. And when we do requirements gathering, we'll talk with you about what specifically you need to see. There are a couple noteworthy items here. One is the request type. And I want you to know that when we are setting this up, it is possible to have multiple different project types. Just looking at the list here, we may have an agile project. We also sync with other applications. So Azure DevOps is one that we sync with. Jira, we sync with often. So there is actually a long list of connectors from Microsoft that will allow us to connect to other applications. So if you're interested in that, please do let us know. But we can tell that a standard project versus a construction project or a marketing project, these may all have different needs. When the project is actually created, we may have different schedules, different workflows, and this process of identifying what type of project we want to create can begin here. We've got some other fields in here to help categorize this request. We can also enter in details about what this project would look like as far as our dates. Our qualitative and quantitative benefits are here too. And then there's also scoring. When we have a lot of requests coming in, one of the challenges is being able to compare those requests and decide which ones we want to move forward with. The priority score here gives us one metric that we can use to compare different requests. So what we're doing on this page is we're listing out our business drivers. And for each business driver, like expanding into new markets and segments, the requester, the person filling this out, they can use the dropdown to select a rating. So when it comes to this particular request, they can identify which one aligns most with this business driver. And then that gets incorporated into the priority score. The last part here is attachments. We can attach additional documents here. So if there is any supplemental information you have, we can attach it here. And then we go ahead and submit. Once we submit, it will start an approval process. Every person that's involved with this, the requester, the approvers, they will get email notifications letting them know that there is something that is in progress. I'm going to pause for a moment and just see if anybody has any questions about the request form. Go ahead, John.
Hi, thanks. So the page you're on right now, if someone was going to make a request, do they just need a Microsoft license for this, or do they need the what is it, PPM 360 is an additional license for them to make requests?
Great question. Well, there actually is not a PPM 360 license. All of the licensing comes from Microsoft. And the good news for people coming from Project Online is that the licensing is the same. So the same kind of Plan 1, Plan 3, Plan 5 structure is there. The even better news when it comes to intake specifically is that no license is really needed here. So you don't need any of those plan licenses to access this. This is a Canvas Power App, so we're able to share it with as many people as we'd like.
Thank you. And then you said you can restrict access based on different levels of, okay, thank you.
Yes, restrict access, but also, we can modify who sees what when they come here. Sometimes we show everything because it cuts back on duplicates. Sometimes we also just want to focus people more so that if a request has their name any place on it, then they'll see it on the list.
Especially if you have security walls at your company where one, let's say legal can't really, or people can't see what's in legal, but they have a different process. So really, when we think about security, we think about all of it and who should have access.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now that we've submitted, I'm going to switch over to my Outlook inbox. And I just wanted to show, and I'll try to be quick here, that as the requester, I did get a notification letting me know that my request was submitted. And it also lets me know that I'll be notified when the next step happens. I'm also the approver on this request. So as the approver, I am presented with this email that gives me my approval options. So what's nice here is that I've got a link over to the intake form. Key information from the intake form can also be displayed in this email, and then the approval options. For today, of course, I'm going to approve just so that we can see our project get created, but there are a lot of possibilities here too. We are using Power Automate for this process, and that means that as soon as we identify, what steps you want, who should be notified, how many approvers there are, and what the rules are, we can build all of that in for you. So we may have a group of approvers, right? We may have me and Jen and John as the approvers, and we can set different rules. We might just need a majority to approve for this project to create. We might just need one, or we might need everybody to approve. All of those rules we build into the Power Automate flow. I'm going to go ahead and submit my response. And once the criteria for creating a project are met, you'll see that the request changes format. So now if we're looking through our inbox at any point, we know that this was acted on. So if Jen had approved this before I got to it and I came here and it was already completed, I would see this same message letting me know that this was submitted and approved. As the requester, there is another message that'll come through letting me know that this was approved and a project will get created. We also can notify the project manager and give them a link to their new project. So really, we can set up this however you'd like. I'm going to move this aside. And I'll also just point out that here we can refresh this and start to see that our submitted request, we'll see that it's approved, and now it's creating the project. While it's creating the project, it's looking to see what our request type is, right? So based on this request type, it'll start to pull together a specific schedule template. We may have some other details that are associated with this project type. And then it'll also carry over some of the fields from the intake form and put them into our project. So when we first open up that project, we will see that some items are already populated based on what we entered in here. So that's a really nice option too. All right, I'm going to head over to the project portal. There's a link here, but also we still have our original tab open where we first started out on the home page. So far, looking at our left menu, we've seen the project requests. We've talked about approvals. The next step will be to look at our project plans. So we've got a little more to talk about here when it comes to comparing Project Online and Project Server with PPM 360. This view here, when we're looking at the project plans, will show us a list of the plans here. In the Gantt section, notice that it's color-coded. The colors that we're seeing here are based on the overall health status of each project. So if it's green, yellow, or red, we can tell that right away at a glance here. The blue, just by the way, means that nobody submitted a status update yet, so it doesn't have an overall health that's been calculated yet. With this, we can scroll down, we can click on a project name and then open it up. But one of the more exciting parts is that we can each play with our own views. So we're used to that with Project Online and Project Server, that we can configure columns as the option there. We can move them around as long as they're already in our view. But here we get the option to add any column that we want. So we can pull from the huge list of columns that exist in the system and add them in there. And then another plus is with the filters. These are a little bit more straightforward than what we're used to with Project Online and Project Server. And they're more flexible. So what we can do here is essentially create our own views. We start out with a view, we can update the columns and the filters and make modifications. And with that, we get to save that new view. We can even set that new view as our own default. Before, with Project Online and with Project Server, we're more reliant on those sticky views, on setting up a filter and then hoping that the next time we come back, it's still there. Sometimes we have to set that filter again and then come back and it sticks. But here, it's a lot more straightforward. We would be able to create our view and then set it as the default. This is the default view in this environment here, but I do want to show that there are plenty of other views that can be set up. My Active Plans is a great way to see plans that I own that are in the system. So looking at this, we're able to see the projects that have me as the project owner. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up a project. I'm going to open up a project that I've already filled in some information on, just so that you get more of an idea of what these projects look like. Now, right away when I open it, you'll notice at the top that there is this project governance workflow. This is another place where we get to use Power Automate. So if there are approvals needed, we would use Power Automate to set those up. We can do things like notify people when we enter a specific stage, or we can notify people just to request approval as we move from one stage to the next. This part is pretty flexible. Project Online right now is still depending on SharePoint Designer 2013 for workflow approvals, which, is its own difficulty there. For right now, it's possible to still set up those workflow approvals, but the amount of flexibility that we have here using Power Automate for this type of workflow, it's a completely different world. There's a lot more that we can do to tailor these to what you need. So you'll see the current stages here, and then there's always a step where you confirm that you're completed. We might list out these deliverables for you if you'd like, but then otherwise we say yes here, and then we move into the next stage. If there's an approval needed, approval will be requested through email and Teams, just like we saw for the intake request. Otherwise, we move into the next stage. Below the workflow, we'll see these different tabs. And each tab, these are kind of like your project detail pages. But it's like your project detail pages and your project site all in one place. So typically with Project Online and Project Server, you're navigating over to the project site to get to your risks, your issues, your lessons learned, if you're tracking them. And that adds, more time just to travel back and forth. It also takes away some of the visibility. So here, throughout the process, we're able to go in and add a lessons learned as it comes up, and then we can enter in our risks and issues. There are also notifications that'll come up. So when I get assigned to a risk, I'll be able to see that here. So it keeps everybody more in the loop and engaged with the project. With these tabs, there is different information that we collect on each one. The summary tab and the business case and project charter, these first three would be more like your general project detail pages, right? Where you're collecting the project details and project information. Those are typically what everybody calls those first couple of PDPs. But here we've got information that carries over from the intake request, and then we've got information that we're going to use to define this project. There are a couple of fields here that I do want to point out. One is the Microsoft Teams integration. We talked earlier in the slide deck about incorporating a sync between your project and Microsoft Teams. And what that will do is make this more visible in Microsoft Teams. I do want to just show my Teams environment right now. So looking at Teams, we can see our Teams menu over here, the list of my teams over here on the left side. But now I've got this project open. What we do is we add the project onto the general channel. So you can see on the general channel, the posts, the shared or files, whichever one you see, and the notes. Those are there like a typical general channel. And then we've added in the project details. We can navigate through our workflow here, or we can go through the different tabs and make updates. And then there's also a tab for project tasks, which focuses more on the tasks related to each project. So if I happen to be in here and I'm having an IM conversation with Jen that results in an update I need to make in the project, everything is right here. So I can jump right over from my chat over into my Teams. I know more recently, a lot of people keep their chat and their Teams combined, so that's even quicker to get from one place to another. All right, I'm going to go back over to the browser. Go ahead, John. I saw your hand go up.
Yes, I had a Teams integration question. When you create a project, does it still create a Teams channel automatically?
You can choose if it should create it automatically or not. What we typically start out with is this option that somebody can select it. And then once they select yes, we also get the option to open in Teams from here. If every project should have a team created, typically what we'll do is we'll default this to yes. And then we may or may not also just hide the field itself, right? So that it stays that way. And then there are some other options too, right? Some people don't necessarily want to create a team for each project, but they might have some set teams already and want to create channels. So that's an option too.
And you can now take what you're doing here and add it to existing teams. Is it channels, or I always forget the hierarchy there?
Yeah, so we actually
Okay.
set up this in the background, right? So what we do is we automate the process so you don't have to really add it to a channel or anything like that. Right now, I'll go over to a channel and that everything that we just saw in Teams is already there.
It's very cool. And I have one last one. We use the OneNote that's in the Teams channel there.
Oh,
Does that still
yes.
get generated along with the?
It sure does. Yes,
Okay,
it's
cool.
still
Thank you.
there. So that's this notes section here.
Yes. Thank you.
Sure. Now with the Teams integration, sometimes we will add, right? If you need to have a folder structure, if you have an archiving process, sometimes we will make some modifications in addition to what I just showed you in Microsoft Teams. So lots of possibilities that we can talk about. Does anybody else have any questions that are coming up? So the Teams integration is there. This also integrates with Planner so that way any place where you have Planner, or to do. So that includes Outlook, the Planner app, Microsoft Teams. You'll be able to see your tasks from this section there too. Other kind of noteworthy parts on this summary page are the program and portfolio. With Project Online and Project Server, we would sometimes create different programs or portfolios for our customers. And, we had to set that up in kind of a different way. Here, it's really straightforward and simple. I'm going to just take this entry out of the program. And I want to just show that when I click in the program field, it's going to show me the list of available programs. Looking at our left menu, you can see that the programs are all managed here. Same with portfolios being managed here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select a program, and I want to take a little bit of a look at the programs area. So we've got our project that we're looking at here with the program selected. I want to go and just show you what the programs section looks like. This is a list of all of our programs. We can create a new program from here or view an existing program. Notice that right here in this view, we're able to tell how these programs are doing. We get an idea of how many projects are part of each program and how those individual projects are doing. I'm going to open up the program, and we'll first see that there are tabs, just like we saw in the project area. With this, we can use this general tab to define our program. So all of the information that you would want to use to define your program, we would list here for you so that you can select this. Remember that everything that we're putting in and viewing here now, we are going to see roll up into reports later on. So whatever information is important for reporting purposes, we will talk with you through the requirements gathering part and make sure that we're including all of that. There is a status tab where we can set the status for the program, but also view the status of the projects that belong to this program. So we can see that 4 active projects are here. 1 is on track, 2 are at risk, and 1 is in trouble. So these translate to our green, yellow, and red KPI status indicators. We'll talk about financials at the project level, but I want to keep in mind that here we can track our budget, benefits, any financial data that you want for the program. So this lets us know what we're planning for this program. And then here under project financials, we're seeing a roll up from all of the projects that are associated with this program. So what this allows us to see is something like this issue we're seeing right now with our budget. Our budget for this program set out to be $100,000. You can see though that the projects that are in this program, their total budget is $175,000. So we've got some work to do on that. We can also capture and roll up the total actual costs. It depends on which financial fields you choose to track. And then with timeline, we get this timeline view of the projects that are part of this program. We get the projects also listed out here with key data from the project. So we get to see the budget and the benefits and the percent complete. And then of course, if there is anything that is troubling here, like our red status here or one of these yellow statuses, we can take a deeper dive by using the hyperlink right here to go ahead and open up that project and see what is causing the issue. So we're back in the project now, right where we started. We can see our program is here. There's also a portfolio, and portfolios are just like programs, but they're a lot lighter. So we don't have as much to fill in there. But again, these are all customizable areas that we can set up based on what your needs are. And then some items like our priority ranking, right? Our business unit that we selected on the intake form, those carried over from intake. So the project manager doesn't have to re-enter anything, or even worse, go back to the intake form, look at what the entry was, and then come back here and fill it in. All right, we've got also a business case area, and I'll pause here for a moment because this business case, you'll see it was generated. I generated this using one of our AI tools. We've got something called Prodigy here. We add it to the menu at the top, but essentially what this does is it acts as your assistant. So whomever's managing this project, they may, be very in touch with the project, but it always helps to be able to use this to bounce things off of. If we want to do a risk analysis and get more information about risks and even suggestions about what to do next, this will generate it for us. So earlier today, I came in here and asked this to generate a business case for us. And what it did is it went through every part of the project and it gave me a full readout. I did modify and start to delete parts of this and make some changes into it, but that's part of the nice thing here is that it gives us a good start and maybe catches some things that we might not catch. And then you can go ahead and modify it the way you like to. All right. Project Charter is also going to have items that come over from the intake area. Again, these are items that we set up based on requirements gathering. So the exact fields that you see here may be tweaked for you, but even capturing it in this way, we can set up flows and things like that. So if we need to share the charter with someone, we can create an export of it so that you have a copy of your project charter to share with people. I'm going to skip over to financials. You already know a little bit what to expect here because it's what we saw when we were looking at the program earlier. Here are the financial fields, and this is kind of our lightest version of financial tracking. If you need to track more, like a monthly account of your actuals, your forecast, and your budget, we can add that in here. We do have a version of PPM 360 that shows that. And we also can add things like purchase requisitions, purchase orders, and invoices. And for some of our customers, what they'll do is sync those with another system. So if you're tracking invoices or purchase orders someplace else, we can sync that data with PPM 360. And that gives the PM an idea of where things are. We created that because a lot of times, we're talking with our project managers at different customers, and they would complain that they don't really know exactly where things are financially with their project. And they might reach out to somebody and get a response in a couple days, but then, this provides them a way to stay on top of things. So we'd be happy to show more of that. If you want to reach out, we can schedule some time to look more into the financials. And then we should look at status as well. We'll see here at the top, just a readout of our current status. So we know where this project is right now. At the bottom, we'll see our weekly status updates. So we'll take a quick peek at one of those. This is where we'll enter in all of the data for each week when we do our status updates. So there are a couple of automations that we've built into this tool, right? And that's just to save time. One of the automations built in here is the ability to copy a status report. So if week 2 is completed and I'm ready to draft the status report for week 3, if there isn't a lot that's changed, I can copy this by selecting yes here. And then when I open up the copy, I'll just tweak this and make the changes for week 3. Another automation that's built in here is the submitted to. You can enter a name in here, and then when you save this, it'll generate a formatted copy of the status report so that it can be sent out. I happen to have sent this one earlier, so this is just an example of what that status report could look like. This format here is customizable. So typically, if we're building this for a customer, we will include, your logo, your color theme, and all of that so that it's more personal. So that's our status. And that's something we would normally have on a project online or project server, project site. Same with things like risks and issues. Here, you can see that looking at the risks, we do have some other ways to interact with them. Planner is very board-based, so we've created a board view here. And you'll see that if we need to change something about one of these, we can drag and drop. We can also expand it and view more detail. And then with any of these, we can also edit, or we could create a new item, of course. I'm going to show the risks for a moment because there's also an automation we've built in here. if this risk actually happens and it becomes an issue, then what we can do is we can select yes here. And when we save and close this, it'll automatically create an issue for us and carry over all of the relevant information from the risk. With Project Online and Project Server, we do have the ability to say that a risk or an issue are related to each other and kind of link them, but this is one step beyond that. And this risk opened up in a new tab, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. Issues also has the board view. With both of these, you can toggle into a grid view if you prefer that. But again, as this is getting updated, if it goes on hold or anything like that, we can drag and drop. Changes are another one of those items that we would typically keep on a project site, but here with PPM 360, it's right here, front and center. I'm going to go ahead and open up one of these and just give you an idea of what our change form looks like. When it comes to things like risks, issues, changes, really all of these tabs, what we're doing is we're building our out-of-the-box solution based on best practices, but also feedback from our customers. So what we built into the change request form is a place where you can capture all the details about the change request, but then in addition to that, you can also track the approval of that change request. So we enter in all the details here. When we're ready to request approval for this, we change the approval to requested. And then once we save it, it'll start to generate a request for approval from whomever this is assigned to. So that's our out of the box flow, but of course this could be tweaked to reach out to the project sponsor. It'll send them a link over to the project. And there, license-wise, they don't need to have, a high-level license for that because they won't necessarily need to click and make updates to the project. They'll just need to be able to view it. So then they can get the information they need and then add their result, whether they approve or reject or request more information, in through the email like we saw earlier with the intake. There's a similar list for decisions, also for lessons learned. With lessons learned, we can track the successes and problems. And with all of the items here, we are also able to build reports that display this information. I'll quickly show attachments just because this will bring over the attachments that I added from the intake form. So even the attachments that we added on intake can carry over here. So when we were first introducing this, when we were looking at the slide deck, we were talking a little bit about PPM 360, how it's based on Planner, and then we extended it. So far, we've been looking at the ways that we've extended Planner with PPM 360. To see that Planner piece, that's here on the Tasks tab. There are parts of this that we can modify for you too. If you have a schedule template like the one you see here, we could go ahead and add that in for you. We can preset some of the things that show up in a Planner plan, but essentially the way that this works in here is Planner. So you'll recognize the Planner views, and I'm aware that some people here may not be as familiar with Planner, so we'll take just a minute or two to, look through some of the different views. The board view is here, and it provides different ways to group your tasks. So you can choose, and of course you can drag and drop. At any point, you can open up a task and view more details. Planner, in the in previous years was a lot more straightforward and didn't have as much of the detail that we can add here. But being able to use these different labels to categorize our tasks and being able to assign these to multiple people helps, but being able to add in our dependencies, that really helps a lot. And notice now, instead of just finish to start, we can add in start to start, finish to finish. We can have lag or lead time in here as well. There's a timeline view that's very interactive. So we can use a timeline view to set up dependencies, but then we can also use it to reschedule tasks. We can use it to adjust the duration of a task just by dragging and dropping. So lots that we can do in there. We can track goals. There are sprints that we can set up, lots of great things. And then we've also added a way to take baselines. These are like Project Online baselines, but a little bit easier to take, we just say create baseline, yes, and that'll take care of it. I want to take a moment to go over to reports and give you a quick preview of our report pack. It comes out of the box with PPM 360. Of course, it's linked here on our left menu. And those different parts of the project lifecycle that we've walked through today, they all come together here in the reports. The first report page that we're going to see is related to the intake requests. So as we're looking at intake requests and evaluating and seeing which ones we should move forward with, the reports are a very helpful tool. We can use the priority score. We can also make sure that we don't have a lot of requests that are submitted that somebody's forgotten to act on. So we can use the sections at the top here to quickly filter. And now we know that these all need some attention. If we have a meeting or something like that to review these, we can make sure that everything is addressed. So these are for the intake. The next few reports are all looking at every project in our portfolio of projects. So every project in the system will show here. This one focuses on health. If we are looking at our projects, let's say that we're the owner of a program, we could select our program here so that we can focus on that one program. And then we can also look at which ones need attention, right? Or which ones need attention, but maybe aren't in that much trouble yet. And then we can just make sure that everything is on track. So the reports really give you the visibility you need to make sure that everything's running smoothly. There's a dashboard with general information. There's also a timeline that we can use for planning. So when we want to see when to start a new project, this is a really helpful thing that we can use to see when we have time as a team. There's a milestone report. Microsoft typically includes a general milestone report as well. There's a program health report. There's a status report that I'll show quickly. So everything we entered in our status report would show here, plus those other items that we entered in for risks, issues, and changes, and items from the other tabs as well. There's a dashboard for risks and a dashboard for issues, also a dashboard for changes. And then with resources, we can view every resource assignment from here. We can look at individual resources and see what projects they're assigned to, and even see what tasks they're assigned to. In addition to being able to see their assigned to dates, we can also get an idea of how far along they are. So that helps with making assignments as well. And with resource availability, we get a lovely heat map that we can use for planning purposes. So if we want to look at a certain month, we can do that. If we want to look at a certain person during any month, we can do that. And we can see here that everything that Allison in this example is assigned to that contributes to her being over allocated here. So then we know what we need to maybe rearrange or update. And then there's just two more, one more where we're looking at tasks, another where we're looking at timelines. So at each stage of the project lifecycle, there are reports to go along with it. There is reporting, of course, if you go with the other path with Project Server as well. I hope that being able to look at all of this provided you some ideas about what your options are. I did want to bring back the slide just so that we remind you that we can always talk with you more about which path will work best for you, or also dig a little bit deeper into any of the items that we showed today. So if anybody has any questions, we do still have a few minutes. John, go ahead.
I have a couple. I have one on the project status report that you just showed. Is it possible to report out on high level tasks on that report? It looked customizable like that.
Yeah, so you want to just report maybe the deliverables, like
Yes, like if there's 5
Yeah.
deliverables for a project, and just
That
call out
is-
those header level percentages.
that is possible to do.
Okay. And then I had another question. When you went over the actual task view and it looked a lot more like project built in the planner combined,
Yes.
are you able to open that in Microsoft Project, or does it always live in that view you were just in?
Oh, that is such a good question. And we had a slide that mentioned that earlier, and I forgot to come back to that topic. So here, when we're looking at these tasks, we've actually built something that we call Planner Sync 360 that will sync this project over with Project Professional. A lot of us, and I'll include myself in that, we used Project Server and Project Online so long that, we are pretty used to that desktop application. So what we can do is set up that sync application for you. And then what that'll do is it'll allow you to update your task here and then publish them over to project, or, update them in project and then publish them back to here.
Very cool. Thank you. And so I assume you can use templates too. If we have like a standard template, we can use it that way. Okay, thank you.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. It's kind of a terrible joke, but it's a joke I always say when I was at Microsoft. So the beautiful thing about this is you can actually do anything you want. The tough thing about this is you could do anything you want. So that's why requirements are so important in making sure that we really stick with your workflow and how it's going to be best for your company to work with it. Well, and if there are no other questions, Mia, thank you for the fabulous job you just did. That was great. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. We will send you the recording of this, and we hope that we get to talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great
Great,
day.
thank you.